current study that we're proposing is looking at the maggots specifically as a debridement device. So actually has to remove the sort of mini plastic surgeons to remove the flesh. But we will also be looking, it's not an actual outcome of our study, but we will be collecting, the maggots back. And I was saying to the hospital, no, don't put them in the disinfectant. Give me them back. Thank you.
That was Dr. Mel Thomson explaining that she actually didn't want her maggots disinfected. I'm James Purser, and this is Purser Explores the World. Okay, first off, I'd just like to say it's been a little longer between episodes than I had planned. Sorry about that. One of the slightly frustrating things about making an interview-based podcast is that sometimes you just can't get people to talk to you about the stuff that you want to talk about. But I'm working on it. Anyway, moving on with the show. Now, before I go on, I must give 2 warnings. Firstly, if you are put off by mention of things like maggots, flesh-eating bacteria, or stakeholders, then this is probably not the episode for you. Secondly, the audio is a bit echoey, so please bear with us. Maggots. Most people have the sort of reaction to them that could best be described as vomitous. I know I do. The sight of the wriggling little buggers is pretty much guaranteed to bring a lump to my throat, usually lunch. However, as disgusting as I think they are, they have proven to be an effective, if slightly disturbing, method of dealing with the problems of dead and decaying flesh in wounds, especially those caused by bacteria resistant to antibiotics. Maggot debridement therapy, as it's known, was considered a legitimate part of wound care up until the 1940s. However, with the advent of penicillin, the wriggly little buggers were viewed as outdated and ineffective. However, with the rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, maggots are enjoying something of a resurgence, stepping back into the limelight, as it were, to battle the old foe. Microbiologist Dr. Mel Thomson and forensic entomologist Dr. Michelle Harvey are in the process of launching a new study into the use of maggots to treat the ulcerated sores caused by the bacteria M.Ulcerans. Their focus is on how well the wriggly little munchers clean the wound of dead or decaying flesh, but they're also exploring something else. They're crowdfunding their science.
Well, I used to specialise in gut microbiology, so I'm very interested in host-pathogen interactions between microbes in the gastrointestinal tract. So Helicobacter pylori has been my recent postdoc that I did in the UK. I'm also now got a student working on Clostridium difficile, the hospital-acquired superbug. But since arriving at Deakin and living in Geelong, it became apparent to me that there was this local nasty lurgy, as it were, affecting lots of people, including people I know and my mum and dad's dog and things like that. And so it became something that I used to think about as a microbiologist, that perhaps we should be doing more, because there were sort of groups of people looking at the sort of genetics of the mycobacteria, and then my colleagues at the hospital looking at the sort of clinical side, but there's no real people down here looking at the sort of transmission aspects, which I think is the missing link really in this research.
So this bacteria that you're working with is a local issue for you guys then? Yeah. It's
our own backyard personal zoonotic disease down here at Deakin, Geelong.
Okay, now Michelle, you're a forensic entomologist.
Yeah.
Okay, now the last time I heard that term, I watched a very early episode of CSI.
Of course you did.
To be honest, I haven't actually watched it that much since. But he was always about the insects that he found on the dead bodies as a way of helping him determine cause of death or time of death. Now, is that the sort of thing that you do, or is it actually more realistic than that?
I'm not quite Gresham. I'm much better looking.
I can attest to that. This is a video call.
Exactly. I am a forensic entomologist. My training is as a medical and veterinary entomologist. I just wanted to do something that had an impact on society.
So the bulk of my research is decomposition research. So I've worked at the body farm in Tennessee, done crime scenes in South Africa as well. And I do a lot of genetic work with maggots, so looking at DNA-based identification, identifying globules in their stomachs, that kind of thing as well. I guess I'm interested in general maggot biology and their association with bacteria, because obviously on corpses they're associated with a lot of bacteria. And I was looking for someone to help me with these bacteria, so I stumbled into Mel's office one day in February, and the rest is history.
That's right. And said, "Have I got the maggot for you?"
We've both been twisted another way now.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, maggots, and you're like, oh, bacteria.
Yeah,
it's been great.
Okay, so you've got this project. Do you want to have a look at how maggots actually deal with this bacteria, this ulcerating bacteria, which is causing nasty sores? From the pictures that you've been posting, this is a flesh-eating bacteria.
Yep.
So, okay, what made you decide to actually see how maggots would handle it?
Well, when Michelle walked into my office and said, "Hi, I want to talk about maggots," I went, "Ooh, well, my first experience with maggots was as a young girl living on a farm."
Oh, the good old fly blown.
Yeah. No fly-blown sheep. No, it was a medical use of maggots. It's completely my inspiration for this project. And we had a horse that had been a bit young and stupid and ran into a fence and scraped her back leg down to the bone.
Ooh.
Like a foot-long big scrape on her back leg. And so we called the vet, and he's come, wrapped it, put a surgical dressing on it, cleaned the wound and wrapped it up. And then he came 3 days later to change the dressings, opened it up, and it was completely full of maggots. A natural infection of maggots, where they've got natural infestation. Yes, infection. See, I'm a microbiologist. I get it wrong. The horse had a natural infestation of maggots, and the wound was amazing. It was just so clean. The vet's just gone, wow, that's good. Oh, I'll leave the maggots there. They're doing a good job. We'll just wrap it up again and hope some more maggots get in there from another load of, like blowfly eggs that get laid on the back of a horse's leg. And so the horse actually had a really good outcome for that injury that was right down to the bone. Because of the maggot, they're cleaning up the sort of scar tissue and the dead flesh. And so, I've always had that in the back of my mind. And then when I met Michelle, and I knew about the flesh-eating bacteria that's local history, local excitement around here, then I thought, what about the two of them together?
Because I think what's unique is people don't realise it's the same blowfly species that we find on corpses that's also responsible for fly strike in most parts of the world, although it's a quite close relative here in Australia. It's the same one that we use in wounds to clean up. So it's really interesting, how do the maggots deal with bacteria in these different environments? Because in some ways they have such a bad effect on our society with the fly strike, yet we can use them in a different way for our own advantage in maggot debridement therapy. And I guess we're interested in how that actually happens. What is their interaction with the bacteria? What's the benefit?
I mean, hopefully we'll just be with our current study that we're proposing is looking at the maggots specifically as a debridement device. So actually to remove the sort of mini plastic surgeons to remove the flesh. But we will also be looking, it's not an actual outcome of our study, but we will be collecting, the maggots back. And I was saying to the hospital, no, don't put them in the disinfectant, give me them back, thank you. And then I'll be trying to see if I can grow mycobacteria from their gut. Because you never know, the mycobacteria in the wounds, if it's still alive, because the patients will be treated with high doses of broad-spectrum antibiotics to try and kill the bacteria in the wounds, and they are for at least 4 weeks before they have the debridement therapy. So the actual wounds may not be infected with live bacteria by the time the maggots get there. But we just won't know until we sort of extract the maggot guts.
It's very much a first study. We've got big plans, but it makes sense to concentrate on the local problem and have quite a small issue to look at to start with, because maggots are responsible for debriding the wounds and taking away the dead tissue, but they also excrete and secrete substances that have antibacterial properties.
Okay.
They will kill things in the wounds and feed on the bacteria as well. They're responsible for causing increased flushing of the wounds as well. So they have lots of effects. This is our first step. So we're really excited to actually get into this area and have a beginning.
I'm particularly excited about the sort of not much is documented about the immune stimulation of delivered by maggots on a wound. I mean, sort of generic statements about that, but there's no real proper evidence. And with the M.Ulcerans infections, M.Ulceran actually produce the chemical they produce to melt the skin and melt the flesh actually suppresses the local immune system as well. And so that's how they get away with it for so long, because there's no inflammation. You don't get itchy, it doesn't get red, it just sort of melts without you really noticing. And then you're like, oh, there's a crater in my leg. Oh dear.
Because there's some reports in the literature that indicate that maggots can actually help to promote the growth of new tissue, but there's not much supporting it.
No, there's no evidence really.
It's very much beginning.
The first time I was introduced to the concept of maggots as a legitimate debridement sort of method, it was watching Gladiator, the movie.
That's where we get all of our scientific basis of our ideas from too.
I know. I mean,
we don't get it from CSI, but we do get it from Russell Crowe movies.
Well, yeah, I can understand why. I mean, Russell Crowe is an amazing source of inspiration. But there was a scene in there in which he's been wounded and somebody's using maggots to clean an infected wound on his arm, and he's being carried across by slaves, yada, yada, yada. Is there a lot of work being done into how maggots do this on a more general scale? You're looking at how maggots work as a debridement therapy. Has there been other research into similar sort of infections, dealing with similar sort of flesh-eating infections?
They have, not this one specifically. They're generally, most of the use for maggot debridement therapy is on diabetic leg ulcers or sort of bed sores, pressure sores, and usually there is immunocompromised patients and elderly patients that tend to get those kind of things. And so the results for those kind of things have shown, and some results have said, oh, well, there's not much difference in it, but it's used a lot as a last line of therapy. When all other therapies have failed, they bring on the maggots, basically, because they're like, well, we've got nothing to lose, and the patient's starting to get desperate, and they'll say yes to something creepy crawly on their skin. And so there is reports of that. But there has been some sort of clinical trials in the UK. They do use them quite frequently to debride wounds, and they have done studies. And I think, most of the studies say that the sort of cosmetic outcomes can be better. The actual time to healing is not necessarily better than some of the other interventions. Like
the cost is lower.
The cost is much lower.
Less invasive.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of the studies where you're looking at wounds, the clinical studies, there's more than one type of bacteria involved.
Yes.
The studies where they've actually targeted a specific type of bacteria are the ones that are being done in a lab, in a plate.
Yeah, no,
that's such an artificial situation that you really can't form any conclusions. So people have shown there's variable kind of effects against E. coli and MRSA, and really getting into some of the superbugs that have got this antibiotic resistance. There is potential there, but there's mixed results because people have often done this in a plate. And they basically just got maggots and washed them to get whatever's on the outside of them, their excretions and secretions, and then seen if it kills some bacteria. And that's not the same as putting a maggot into a wound and letting it actually feed and use its digestive enzymes on these bacteria. So we want to have a realistic perspective on it and still look in the laboratory to see what's going on. I think what's unique about this partnership between us is it's the first really holistic view where we put an entomologist and a microbiologist together and said, we want to understand this from the insect point of view and from the microbes point of view, whereas we usually come from one perspective or the clinician's perspective. Yeah. And we really want to understand the science behind it, so there's no alchemy behind it anymore. It's a really informed approach. Yeah.
Now, the other cool thing about this project is that you're crowdfunding it.
Yes.
I think this is the first time, there might have been a band or some sort of sporting team called Maggots, but I think it's the first time somebody...
There's a band, there's a ska punk band in Germany called Mighty Maggots, and they stole the Gmail address. So we really regret that.
Yeah, I have to say they are the... They are the most popular Facebook return for Mighty Maggots as well.
Not for long.
Not for long.
I'm on the case. No, I am the Mighty Maggot.
We will take over the Mighty Maggot mantle.
Excellent. Now, why are you crowdfunding?
Well, why not really? I mean, we're both early career researchers that have just come back recently from overseas, so we're building up our labs and building up our networks. And Australia's seems, compared to my experiences in 12 years in the UK, it seems a little bit small, quite parochial, and maybe a bit nepotistic with things like funding. And so you basically have to get a bit creative. And these days, you've got university cuts, you've got basically freezing the science budgets. I mean, there's lots of people saying we promise we will cut it, but when they don't actually increase it by the price of inflation, that is a cut every year. And so if they've been freezing it, then it's basically going down by 4% a year, and our costs are going up by at least that a year. And so we were offered this opportunity by Deakin, and we basically took it with both hands. We said, hey, we've got something that the public might be interested in.
I think that's the beauty of it, actually, because the people who will potentially be funding it will be the ones who will benefit from it. Well, sometimes with the funding agencies, you see that it's more theoretical kind of projects that people aren't going to see the direct outcome of immediately, whereas it's immediately tangible. It's going to benefit the people who are funding it straight away. And I think that's what appeals to people. It's something very applied, and that's something that we've been very conscious of throughout applying for grants and things, that we have got kind of end users involved. Yeah. So all the grants we've looked at, we've got fly strike people, forensic people, we're involved with the West Mead maggot debridement people who actually supply these maggots. So we want to make sure that whatever research comes out of this is actually directly going to benefit people. It's not just going to be pouring money into a lab somewhere and never seeing the end result. So with crowdfunding, we hope that we can appeal to the people who are going to benefit.
Now, you said this is a local bug that you're actually using the maggots against. Yep. You've had a couple of articles in the local Geelong paper. Are you going to be pitching heavily towards them for the funding?
Oh, yeah. We will be directly pitching to... I actually live on the Bellarine Peninsula in Ocean Grove, and the four biggest towns that have this problem are Ocean Grove, Bowen Heads, Point Lonsdale and Queenscliff. And I will be directly pitching to the Queenscliff Borough Council to try and give us a large donation to our crowdsourcing initiative, as well as directly to the actual punters who have either suffered from this disease or have had dogs that have suffered from this disease, or have ever seen a skanky possum suffering from this disease, or are scared that they may suffer from it in the future. And so there's that direct stakeholder engagement that we will be doing. And because it's quite... I think my mum refers to Point Lonsdale as God's waiting room. So there's quite a lot of people that perhaps don't have friends. No, hear me out.
Don't worry, every place has their suburbs, which are God's waiting room, where everybody goes to retire and just basically look out at the beach until it's time to pop off.
In the study, it comes up as the word. Yeah, well, that's it. That's wow. But so basically, there's a lot of people we need to go out and actually talk to face to face because they don't have Twitter or Skype or Facebook or, those kind of things. So we need to go out and actually have town hall meetings as well to try and raise funds. Okay, like that.
You're also using social media to try and raise not only the possible stuff, your crowdfunding, but also the idea of your study. You have two very cute mascots, which I can see you holding in your hands. This is an audio podcast, so I'll just describe it for our listeners. Yeah. One of them is a very cute-looking stuffed bacterium. This is the thing that actually eats your flesh. It has very cute bobbly eyes and a knife and fork, but no arms. This one's cuter.
This one may look like a furry sex toy, but it's not. Oh, come on. That's what you're thinking. He said there wasn't any kids. Come on, gosh.
But the other one is a stuffed maggot. They're both very cool. Now, I'm assuming these will be your mascots because you've got two Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got one which is your maggot who's writing in to save the day, and one.
And my maggots, and this is Collection on Bug.
Yes, we are speaking on behalf of our discipline through the alter egos.
I think that's the beauty of it. It's trash talk, as everyone keeps telling me, although I'm brutally insulted by that.
No,
but there's a bit of science going on with it too.
Hold on.
So people pick up on that.
Yeah.
Sorry, is there a maggot involved with trash talk?
No, well, we just basically call it maggots trash talk, where we're basically the obviously the flesh-eating bug is saying, you'll never get me. He's sort of pantomime villain, and that's my role, to play the sort of evil flesh-eating bacteria persona.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the superhero.
And obviously Michelle is on moral high ground as the superhero maggot.
I guess we're kind of cashing in on the fact that we have a really topical area that people are fascinated with. When we thought about how we were going to promote this, you were thinking like B grade or even C grade horror movies,
zombie movies.
It gets people's imaginations, and that's what I've always found with forensic entomology. People want to hear about it because they love it, and they're disgusted by the concept of maggots.
But strangely fascinated.
Yeah, so this is a way for us to get science across, and I think we see the Twitter feed as also being a way to maybe get some science to kids, and certainly the science teachers and things who are really interested in what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So Forensics have been actively involved in like outreach with schools and things. I do a lot of that kind of thing, especially through forensics. So it is a way to encourage people into science. So it's not just about the crowdfunding and trying to get money out of it. It's about increasing awareness, because this is a beginning, I hope, of a big future research collaboration. So we're kicking off in style.
Yeah, we'll see.
Attacking each other.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's been great. It's so fun to be the evil villain.
It seems to appeal to people.
As people do. There's people following us, and then we insult the people. They insult people.
Yeah, she says she's going to go after their kids. And
that's fine. Because
she says she's going to go after her own kids.
I'm mostly insulting my own self. I usually insult myself. But that's okay. But,
all right. So when do you launch your campaign?
So that launches next Wednesday
Mm-hmm.
On the 8th of May, and that's the first. There's a big Possible, which is the website the crowdfunding website that we're using. This is the first time they've ever done research projects, and so they're doing this as a partnership with Deakin. I think there's 8 projects in total, which ours is only one of, being presented next Wednesday as Research My World initiatives, and it will be launched on Wednesday with a fanfare the university can drum up, and then our accounts will be open and we'll be able to take donations. And $1 gets you a maggot, and $5 gets you like a whole square centimetre of wound treated with that maggot. So
let's clarify, we're not giving that to the person who
you sponsor a maggot.
You get satisfaction just knowing a patient has had a maggot.
If I can sponsor a maggot, can I get a little certificate that says I sponsored maggot number 267,000?
Do you want a photo of him, like a sponsor child?
With name? Yeah, maybe. But
I sponsored a starving maggot.
Have to give substantially more than $5 to get that kind of reward. I mean, we're not obliged to give rewards because it is a charity project.
Yeah.
And usually on Possible.com you give rewards such as I'll sponsor my Eskimo Joe album and I'll give you a copy when it's produced, and things like that. But because this is actually registered as a charity, we're not supposed to give out rewards because we endanger our tax-free status.
Oh, yes. It's a very complicated area with the ATO.
Yes. So we've actually asked if we can give out maggot artwork, which is original artwork prepared by our mighty maggots, but only to donors that are producing large donations like $500 or $1,000.
Well, the maggots don't get out of bed.
No, they don't get out of bed for less than $500. So we're offering rewards for large donors, but we're not really expecting any, if any.
Yeah. I'm sorry, now I've got this image of Yves Saint Laurent maggots.
Yeah, that's right. Supermodel maggots. They're getting a bit hoity-toity, these maggots, let me tell you.
They are.
I think they are. They're getting, and I keep, the flesh non-bug has to keep knocking me back down and saying, hey, fly strike, I've got 2 words for you, fly strike. You're not all superheroes.
Yeah, I've had to be there when somebody's dealt with fly strike.
Yeah. It's a really different scenario, though, because I think that's what people picture in their head, a seething wound of maggots. It's not that way at all, because we're measuring the size of the wound and calculating exactly how many you put in.
And they're really tiny when they go in too.
Yeah,
really
the reason they don't get into live tissue and cause more problems is that we are very strict about calculating the right number to go into the wound, bandaging them in and counting them out before they can actually get to the point where they get that voracious that they might attack live tissue. So you don't have a problem like that. It's very, very different.
They're very carefully calibrated for their life stage.
Well, in the UK when they do it, they actually put them into the wounds quite often in little tea bags. It's a little perforated bag. Doesn't work. So they're not free range. We have free range maggots.
We're having free range because
we're really like that here.
Well, you don't want battery maggots.
I believe in maggot freedom and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, we like free range.
Liberate the maggots.
Yeah, we don't want to lock them away in a little battery cage. No.
No, okay, you need a T-shirt with that on it. You know that.
Yeah.
It has something going for it. I'll have free the maggot T-shirts. Yeah, that's required.
Yeah, no, we're not required to put them in little cages here, so we're allowed to put them directly on the wound because hey, that's when they work better.
Once again, apologies for the audio quality. The two doctors were in their office and it was a tad echoey, as you could probably tell. Now, the Mighty Maggots project is not alone. It's actually going to be one of 8 research projects being launched by Possible and Deakin University. 2 of the other projects include a study of tree kangaroos in New Guinea and building a comprehensive map of the seafloor off the coast of Victoria. Now, as well as exploring whether such research can be funded through public programs, and something I want to keep an eye on too, as opposed to the usual route of government grants, these projects will be an exercise in connecting the academics behind the research directly with the public who will be funding it. Doctors Thomson and Harvey are already working on this. They have a Facebook page, the Mighty Maggots. Please ignore the scar band. They also have 2 Twitter accounts, Mighty Maggots and Fleshbug Nom. I'll link to those in the show notes. And they're already looking at building these connections into something better. They're also looking at real-world connections. They're working with the local media. They've had articles in the local newspapers. They're also talking to local groups, local governments, in order to spread the word about a research project which is going to help meet a local need. This bacteria is apparently rife in the area that they're working in. You know, I hope the Mighty Maggots get what they need, not just because I think that the good doctors are excellent people and the work they're doing is important, but I'd like to see this sort of avenue and for research and this connection between research projects and the community built up. To be honest, a lot of science doesn't have that community connection because there's a massive wall between them, and that's, you know, the university or the government that funds it. But if a science project has community funding and community interaction, they have a lot more buy-in than they would otherwise. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. As I said, knock on wood. I shall link to the Possible page, and that'll be going out. That'll be going up tomorrow, actually. So that's what's the date? The 8th of May. So I would hit Possible on the 8th of May and donate to the science project of your choice. All right, well, that's it for another episode of Purser Explores the World. I'm hoping the next episode will be out in 2 weeks, but we'll have to see how we go. Bye.